Cosmic castaway. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before Sarah Reeves, a tapestry of stars and nebulae that had once filled her with wonder. Now, as alarms blared throughout her small scout ship, that beauty had become a terrifying void. Red warning lights flashed across her console, each one a harbinger of her impending doom. "Come on, you piece of junk," Sarah muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. The ship shuddered violently, metal groaning under the stress of atmospheric entry. She had been on a routine survey mission when a sudden ion storm had knocked out her navigation systems and sent her hurtling towards an uncharted planet. As the ground rushed up to meet her, Sarah's training kicked in. She fought the controls, trying to level out the ship's descent. Trees, or what looked like trees, whipped past her view screen in a blur of alien colors. With a bone-jarring impact, the ship plowed into the soft earth of an open field, carving a deep furrow before finally coming to rest. For a long moment, Sarah sat motionless in her seat, her heart pounding in her ears. She was alive. Somehow, against all odds, she had survived. As the adrenaline began to fade, she took stock of her situation. The ship was a total loss, its hull breached in multiple places. Life support was offline, but her suit's sensors indicated the air outside was breathable, if a bit thin. With trembling hands, Sarah unstrapped herself and stumbled to the emergency hatch. It took all her strength to force it open, and she tumbled out onto alien soil. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, and she found herself bounding a few steps before regaining her balance. The landscape that greeted her was both familiar and utterly alien. Rolling hills covered in purple grass stretched to the horizon, dotted with trees that looked like giant, swaying ferns. Two suns hung in the sky, one a familiar yellow, the other a smaller, redder orb that cast an eerie glow over everything. "Mayday, Mayday," Sarah called into her suit's communicator. "This is Scout Ship Delta 7, pilot Sarah Reeves. I've crash-landed on an uncharted planet. Coordinates unknown. If anyone can hear this, please respond." Only static answered her plea. As the reality of her situation sank in, Sarah felt a wave of despair wash over her. She was stranded on an alien world, light years from any human colony. The chances of rescue were astronomically slim, but giving up wasn't an option. She was a survivor, and she'd be damned if she'd let this planet be her grave. With renewed determination, Sarah began to salvage what she could from the wreckage. She managed to retrieve emergency rations, a portable water purifier, and a few basic tools. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and she spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the laser pistol at her hip. At first, she saw nothing but the gently waving purple grass. Then, almost imperceptibly, something moved on the crest of a nearby hill. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as a figure emerged from behind a stand of fern trees. It was humanoid, but impossibly tall, at least 4 meters in height. Its skin was a pale lavender, smooth and seemingly devoid of hair. As it approached, Sarah could make out more details. The being was unmistakably female, with graceful, elongated limbs and a face that was hauntingly beautiful in its alienness. More figures appeared, each as tall and ethereal as the first. They moved with a fluid grace that belied their size, barely disturbing the grass as they glided down the hill towards her. Sarah stood rooted to the spot, her mind racing. First contact. After centuries of searching the stars, humanity had dreamed of this moment, but not like this. Not alone and stranded on an alien world. The first being came to a stop a few meters away from Sarah. Up close, she could see that its eyes were a deep, swirling violet, with no visible pupils. Those eyes studied her with an intensity that made Sarah feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Hello," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She raised her empty hands, palms out, in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "My name is Sarah. I come from a planet called Earth." The being tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words. Then, to Sarah's utter astonishment, it spoke. The voice was melodic, with a resonance that seemed to vibrate in Sarah's chest. "We are the Zenith," the being said in perfect, unaccented English. "And you, Sarah of Earth, have arrived at a most fortuitous time." Sarah's mind reeled. They spoke English? How was that possible? Before she could voice her questions, the being continued. "We have been watching the stars, waiting for a sign. And now you have fallen from the heavens. You are the key to our salvation." The other Zenith had formed a loose circle around Sarah and their spokesperson. Their faces were impassive, but Sarah could sense an undercurrent of excitement, or was it desperation, in their postures. "I don't understand," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What do you mean, salvation? How do you know my language?" The lead Zenith's expression softened slightly. "We have studied your kind for many cycles. Your broadcasts, your transmissions, they have reached us here, on the edges of your explored space. We have learned much of your ways, your languages, but knowing of you and meeting you are very different things." Sarah's mind was spinning. The implications of what the Zenith was saying were staggering. How long had they been watching humanity? And more importantly, what did they want from her? "As for salvation," the Zenith continued, "our people face extinction. We are the last of our kind, and we cannot perpetuate our species alone. But you, Sarah of Earth, you carry within you the key to our future." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. She took an involuntary step back, her hand once again strained to her weapon. "What exactly are you saying?" The Zenith's eyes seemed to glow more intensely. "We need your help, Sarah. Your genetic material, combined with ours, could save our race from oblivion. You could be the mother of a new generation of Zenith." Sarah's mouth went dry. This couldn't be happening. It was too much, too fast. She had crashed on an alien world, met an advanced species that somehow spoke her language, and now they wanted her to, what? Bear their children. "This is insane," she said, shaking her head. "You can't just expect me to agree to something like that. I don't even know you." The lead Zenith held up a hand in a calming gesture. "We understand your hesitation, Sarah. We do not ask this lightly, nor do we expect an immediate answer. We offer you our hospitality, our knowledge, and the chance to learn about us. In return, we ask only that you consider our request." Sarah looked around at the circle of towering aliens. Their faces were earnest, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. Despite her shock and confusion, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of empathy. They were facing the end of their entire species. How could she simply refuse without at least hearing them out? Taking a deep breath, Sarah squared her shoulders. "All right," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll listen, but I'm not promising anything." The lead Zenith nodded sullenly. "That is all we ask. Come, Sarah of Earth. Let us show you our world, and perhaps you will understand why your arrival means so much to us." As the circle of Zenith parted to let her pass, Sarah cast one last glance at the smoking wreckage of her ship. She was leaving behind the last piece of her old life, stepping into a world of unknowns. But as she followed the graceful giants across the purple fields, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a cosmic accident. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had crashed here for a reason. And maybe, in helping these strange, beautiful creatures, she would find a new purpose among the stars. The last hope, Sarah followed the towering zenith through a landscape that seemed to blur the line between natural and artificial. What she had initially taken for hills were, in fact, massive structures seamlessly integrated into the terrain. Their surfaces shimmered with an iridescent sheen, reflecting the jewel sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. The lead zenith, who had introduced herself as Lyra, guided Sarah towards what appeared to be the center of their settlement. As they walked, Sarah's mind raced with questions, but she held her tongue, knowing that answers would come in time. They entered a vast, domed structure that seemed to grow out of the ground itself. Inside, the air was cooler, filled with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Sarah gasped as she took in the interior. It was a blend of organic shapes and advanced technology unlike anything she had ever seen. "Welcome to the heart of Zenith," Lyra said, her melodic voice echoing in the cavernous space. "This is where our elders gather, where we make our most important decisions. And now, it is where we will share with you the true nature of our plight." As if on cue, more Zenith emerged from alcoves around the chamber. These newcomers were different from those Sarah had seen before. Their skin was paler, almost translucent, and they moved with a fragility that belied their imposing size. "Our elders," Lyra explained, noticing Sarah's curious gaze. "They are the last of our original generation." One of the elders stepped forward, her eyes fixating on Sarah with an intensity that made the human feel like her very soul was being examined. When the elder spoke, her voice was like wind through ancient trees. "Child of Earth, do you know what it means to watch your entire species fade into twilight?" Sarah swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. I can't imagine," she managed to say. The elder nodded slowly. "It is a weight beyond measure. We Zenith were once a thriving civilization, spreading across the stars, but our pursuit of perfection became our undoing." With a wave of her hand, the elder conjured a holographic display in the air before them. Sarah watched in awe as images of the Zenith's history played out. She saw great cities, advanced spacecraft, and feats of engineering that put humanity's greatest achievements to shame. "In our quest to evolve, to become more than we were," the elder continued, "we altered our own genetic code. We made ourselves stronger, more intelligent, virtually immortal. But in doing so, we lost something crucial." The images shifted, showing Zenith scientists working feverishly in laboratories, their faces etched with growing concern. "We lost the ability to reproduce naturally," Lyra interjected, her voice heavy with sorrow. "Each generation became more difficult to create, requiring more advanced techniques, until finally, we could no longer produce viable offspring at all," the elder finished. "Our population has been declining for centuries. What you see here, Sarah of Earth, are the last few thousand Zenith in existence." Sarah felt a wave of vertigo wash over her. The magnitude of what they were telling her, of what they were asking of her, was almost too much to comprehend. "But why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Surely there are other species out there, ones more advanced than humans." Lyra shook her head. "We've searched, Sarah. For longer than your species has existed, we've scoured the stars for a compatible race. Many were too different, their genetic structures incompatible with ours. Others," she paused, a shadow passing over her face. "Others saw us as a threat and reacted with hostility. Humans, though," the elder said, her eyes sparkling with something akin to hope, "humans are special. Your genetic structure is remarkably adaptable, resilient in ways we've never seen before, and your species' capacity for rapid evolution is unparalleled." Sarah's mind was reeling. Everything she had ever known about humanity's place in the universe was being turned on its head. "So, what exactly are you proposing? You said something about me being a mother to a new generation." Lyra stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. Despite the Zenith's enormous size, her touch was incredibly delicate. "We have developed a process that we believe can combine human and Zenith DNA. With your genetic material as a foundation, we could potentially create offspring that inherit the best traits of both our species. The children would be hybrids," the elder explained. "Neither fully human nor fully Zenith, but something new. Something that could ensure the continuation of both our lineages." Sarah felt her knees go weak. She sank down onto a nearby structure that obligingly morphed into a seat to support her. It's too much. You're talking about creating an entirely new species, and you want me to be what? The mother of an entire race." The elder's expression softened. "We understand the enormity of what we ask, child, but you must understand, without this, we face certain extinction." Our civilization, our knowledge, everything we have achieved over millennia will be lost. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process everything she had learned. On one hand, the idea terrified her. She was just one woman, a scout pilot who had never even considered having children of her own, let alone becoming the progenitor of a hybrid species. On the other hand, how could she turn her back on an entire civilization? The fate of the Zenith, and potentially the future of human-alien relations, rested on her shoulders. "What if I say no?" she asked quietly, opening her eyes to meet the elder's gaze. The elder's face remained impassive, but Sarah could sense a deep sadness emanating from her. "Then we will respect your decision. We are not barbarians, Sarah of Earth. We will not force you to do anything against your will. We would provide you with whatever we could to help you survive on our world, or even attempt to return you to your people, though our ability to travel the stars has greatly diminished." Lyra knelt beside Sarah, bringing herself to eye level. "But before you decide, we ask that you stay with us for a time. Learn about our people, our culture. See the beauty and knowledge we hope to preserve. Perhaps then you will understand why we have placed our last hope in you." Sarah took a deep breath, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to run, to find some way off this alien world and back to the familiar comfort of human civilization. But a growing part of her was curious, intrigued by the Zenith and the incredible opportunity they were offering. "All right," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll stay. I'll learn about your people, but I'm not making any promises beyond that." The elder nodded solemnly. "That is all we can ask. Thank you, Sarah of Earth, for giving us this chance." As Sarah stood, she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, not just those of the Zenith in the chamber, but of an entire species teetering on the brink of extinction. She had come to this world as a lost and stranded human, but now she found herself in a position she could never have imagined, the potential savior of an alien race. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, cultural barriers to overcome, and difficult decisions to make. But as Sarah looked around at the ancient, hopeful faces of the Zenith, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the same resilience and adaptability that had allowed humanity to reach the stars. For better or worse, her crash landing on this alien world had set in motion events that could change the course of two civilizations forever. And Sarah Reeves, once a simple scout pilot, now stood at the crossroads of history, poised to bridge the gap between two worlds and possibly forge a new future for both. Trials of adaptation. The days that followed Sarah's arrival blurred together in a whirlwind of new experiences. The Zenith, true to their word, had begun integrating her into their society, teaching her about their world and their ways. But for Sarah, each day brought new challenges, both physical and cultural, that tested her adaptability to its limits. The first hurdle was simply navigating a world built for beings 3 times her size. Lyra, who had taken on the role of Sarah's primary guide, had arranged for a living space to be modified to accommodate her human physiology. Even so, Sarah found herself constantly climbing, stretching, and occasionally relying on Zenith assistance just to perform basic tasks. "I feel like a child," Sarah grumbled one morning, struggling to reach a container of what passed for breakfast in Zenith cuisine. Lyra, who had been observing with a mixture of amusement and concern, gently lifted Sarah to the appropriate height. "Your frustration is understandable," she said, her melodic voice tinged with sympathy. "But consider this an opportunity, Sarah. Your struggles help us understand how we must adapt if we are to create a world suitable for both our peoples." Sarah sighed but nodded. She was beginning to understand that every interaction, every difficulty, was being carefully observed and analyzed by the Zenith. They were learning from her as much as she was learning from them. Physical challenges aside, Sarah found herself increasingly fascinated by Zenith culture. Their society was built on a foundation of collective harmony, with each individual striving to contribute to the greater good. There was no concept of personal ownership. Instead, resources were shared based on need and ability to utilize them effectively. But how do you handle conflicts? Sarah asked during one of her daily lessons with a Zenith historian named Vex. Surely not everyone agrees all the time. Vex's eyes swirled with thought, a trait Sarah had come to recognize as a sign of deep contemplation among the Zenith. Conflict, as you understand it, is rare among us, he explained. When disagreements arise, we engage in a process of deep empathy and logical analysis. We strive to understand all perspectives and find solutions that benefit the collective. It was a stark contrast to the often competitive and individualistic nature of human society. Sarah found herself both admiring the Zenith approach and wondering if such a system could ever work among her own people. As the days passed, Sarah's body began to adapt to the slightly lower gravity and different atmospheric composition of the Zenith world. She found herself able to bound effortlessly across distances that would have been challenging on Earth, her muscles reveling in the reduced strain. But with this physical adaptation came an unexpected complication. During a routine medical examination, the Zenith physicians discovered that Sarah's body was changing in ways they hadn't anticipated. "Your cellular structure is showing signs of accelerated evolution," the chief physician, a Zenith named Zara, explained. Her tone was a mixture of excitement and concern. "It seems your body is attempting to adapt more thoroughly to our environment." Sarah felt a flutter of panic. "Is it dangerous? Am I going to turn into some kind of mutant?" Zara's eyes swirled reassuringly. "Not dangerous, no, but it is unexpected. We believe this adaptability might be key to why human DNA is so compatible with our own. Your body is literally trying to bridge the gap between our species." This revelation brought a new intensity to the Zenith's interest in Sarah. She found herself subjected to more tests, more examinations. But rather than feeling like a lab rat, Sarah was included in every discussion, her input sought on every decision. It was during one of these sessions that Sarah formed an unexpected bond. A young Zenith scientist named Silo had been assigned to monitor Sarah's physiological changes. Unlike many of the other Zenith, who maintained a certain emotional distance, Silo was openly curious about Sarah as a person, not just a potential savior. "What was it like, growing up on Earth?" Silo asked one day as they reviewed Sarah's latest test results. "To be surrounded by billions of your own kind." Sarah smiled, a wave of nostalgia washing over her. "Crowded," she said with a laugh, "but also comforting in a way. Knowing you're part of something so vast, so diverse. Although," she added, her smile fading slightly, "it could also feel lonely sometimes, easy to get lost in the crowd." Silo's eyes swirled with interest. "Fascinating. We Zenith have never known such numbers. Every life is precious, every individual crucial to our survival." There was a pause, and when Silo spoke again, her voice was softer. "Perhaps that is why your presence here means so much to us. You represent hope, Sarah. Hope that we might yet have a future." It was moments like these that made Sarah's decision both easier and more difficult. The more she came to know the Zenith, to understand their plight and their potential, the more she felt compelled to help them. But with that growing connection came a deepening sense of responsibility, and the weight of the choice before her grew heavier. As weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself becoming more integrated into Zenith society. She was no longer just an outsider looking in, but an active participant in their daily life. She attended council meetings, offering a human perspective on various issues. She worked alongside Zenith scientists, her unique insights often leading to breakthroughs in their understanding of human physiology. But it wasn't all scientific discussions and cultural exchanges. Sarah found joy in the simple pleasures of Zenith life. She learned to appreciate the haunting melodies of their music, the graceful movements of their dances. She even developed a taste for Zenith cuisine, though some dishes remained stubbornly unpalatable to her human palate. One evening, as the twin suns set in a spectacular display of color, Sarah stood on a high balcony overlooking the Zenith city. Laura joined her, the two of them sharing a comfortable silence as they watched the sky shift through impossible hues. "You've come a long way," Lyra said finally, her voice soft. "When you first arrived, I feared the differences between us might be too great to overcome." Sarah nodded, her eyes still on the horizon. "There were times I thought so too. But now," she trailed off, struggling to put her feelings into words. Lyra placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Now." Sarah turned to look up at her Zenith friend, a small smile on her face. "Now I'm not so sure where I belong anymore. I'm not quite human, not after everything that's changed in me, but I'm not Zenith either." "Perhaps," Lyra said, her eyes swirling with warmth, "you are the first of something new. A bridge between our peoples." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Sarah knew that soon she would have to make her decision. The Zenith had been patient, true to their word in not pressuring her, but time was not on their side. As the last light faded from the sky, Sarah took a deep breath. She thought of Earth, of the life she had left behind. She thought of the Zenith, of their kindness, their wisdom, and their desperate need. And she thought of the future, a future that she now realized she had the power to shape. "Lyra," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach, "I think I'm ready to talk about the next steps, about helping your people." Lyra's eyes widened, swirling with a mix of hope and surprise. "You mean?" Sarah nodded, a sense of calm settling over her. "I want to try. I don't know if it will work. I don't know what the future holds. But I want to try to help create a new generation, to be the bridge between humans and Zenith." As Lyra enveloped her in a gentle embrace, Sarah felt as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she could scarcely imagine, but she was no longer lost. She had found a new purpose, a new home among the stars. The lost human had made her choice. Now, the real work of saving a species, and perhaps changing the course of galactic history, could begin. Echoes of Earth. Sarah's decision to help the Zenith marked a turning point, not just in her own journey, but in the shared destiny of two species. The days that followed were filled with intense preparation, as the Zenith mobilized their considerable scientific resources to ensure the best possible chance of success. But amid the flurry of activity, Sarah found herself drawn to the vast archives of Zenith knowledge. There was something nagging at the back of her mind, a connection she felt she was on the verge of making. With Xylo's eager assistance, she dove into the historical records, searching for, she wasn't quite sure what. "I don't understand," Xylo said one day, watching Sarah pore over holographic displays of ancient Zenith star charts. "How will this help with the genetic integration process?" Sarah shook her head, her eyes never leaving the shimmering star map. "I'm not sure it will, but there's something here, Xylo. Something that connects our peoples beyond just genetic compatibility." As she spoke, her finger traced a familiar pattern among the stars. With a jolt of recognition, Sarah realized what she was seeing. That's the Orion constellation. But how is that possible? This chart is from thousands of years ago, long before the Zenith could have learned about Earth's constellations. Xylo's eyes swirled with excitement. Perhaps it's not Earth's constellation at all. Perhaps both our peoples simply recognized the same pattern independently. But Sarah was already shaking her head, pulling up more star charts, more historical documents. "No, look, here and here. These aren't just similar patterns. These are Earth constellations, Earth myths. This one here, that's clearly a depiction of the Greek hero Hercules." As they dug deeper, a startling picture began to emerge. Scattered throughout Zenith history were unmistakable echoes of Earth's cultures, myths, and scientific discoveries. It was as if the two species had been unconsciously mirroring each other across the vast gulfs of space and time. "But how?" Xylo asked, her voice hushed with awe. "We had no contact with Earth until we began receiving your broadcasts. How could we share so much?" Sarah sat back, her mind racing. What if What if we're not just genetically compatible? What if we're related somehow? The idea was staggering, but the more they investigated, the more evidence they found. Similarities in early technological development, parallel paths of philosophical thought, even certain quirks of language that seemed too specific to be coincidental. When they presented their findings to the Zenith elders and the scientific council, the reaction was one of stunned silence, followed by a flurry of debate and speculation. Could it be that our species share a common ancestor? One elder proposed. Some ancient race that seeded both our worlds. Or perhaps, another suggested, there were early Zenith expeditions to Earth that we've forgotten. Visitors who influence human development in subtle ways. The implications were enormous, potentially rewriting the history of both species. But for Sarah, it was personal. This discovery changed everything about how she viewed her role among the Zenith. "Don't you see," she said, addressing the gathered council. "This isn't just about saving your species. It's about reuniting two branches of the same family tree. We're not just genetically compatible by chance. We're long-lost cousins." The revelation brought a new energy to the Zenith efforts. No longer were they simply trying to save themselves. They were working to forge a connection that perhaps should have existed all along. For Sarah, the discovery helped ease some of the lingering doubts she had about her decision. She wasn't just a random human chosen by chance. She was the key to reuniting two peoples who had been separated for millennia. As the preparations for the genetic integration process continued, Sarah found herself spending more time with Lyra and Dilo. The three of them had formed a close bond, bridging the gap between human and Zenith in ways that went beyond biology. One evening, as they sat watching the twin moons rise over the Zenith city, Lyra turned to Sarah with a serious expression. "Sarah," she said, her melodic voice tinged with concern, "are you truly prepared for what lies ahead? The process will not be easy, and the results, they are uncertain." Sarah took a deep breath, considering her words carefully. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared," she admitted. "The idea of being the mother to a new species, it's overwhelming. But," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "I also feel like this is what I was meant to do. Like everything in my life has been leading to this moment." Silo reached out, gently taking Sarah's hand in her much larger one. "You won't be alone," she said firmly. "We'll be with you every step of the way." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had come to this world alone, a lost human adrift in the cosmos. Now she was part of something greater, surrounded by beings who had become more than just allies. They were family. As the day of the procedure drew near, Sarah found herself reflecting on her journey. She thought of Earth, of the life she had left behind. There was sadness there, a sense of loss for the familiar, but it was overshadowed by the excitement of what lay ahead. The night before the procedure, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her quarters, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world of her birth. And here, on this alien yet increasingly familiar world, was the future she had chosen. A soft chime announced a visitor. Sarah turned to see Lyra entering, her tall form silhouetted against the dim light. "I thought you might be awake," Lyra said softly. "Are you having second thoughts?" Sarah shook her head. "No, not second thoughts. Just reflecting on everything that's brought me to this point." Lyra moved to stand beside her, her presence comforting in its familiarity. "When you crashed on our world," she said, "we thought you were the answer to our prayers, a solution to our impending extinction. But you've become so much more than that, Sarah. You've reminded us of who we once were, of the connection we share with the wider universe." Sarah felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I never imagined this is where I'd end up when I joined the Scout program," she said with a small laugh. "Lost in space, chosen by giant alien women to save their species. It sounds like something out of a science fiction story." Lyra's eyes swirled with amusement. "Perhaps that's what it is. A story being written across the stars, with you and I and all of us as its characters." As the first sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever uncertainties the future held, she was ready to face them. She was no longer Sarah Reeves, lost human. She was Sarah of Earth and Zenith, the bridge between worlds, the mother of a new future. And as the new day dawned, she prepared to take the first step into that future, not alone, but with her new family by her side. The genetic integration process awaited, and with it, the next chapter in the shared history of humanity and the Zenith. As Sarah took one last look at the rising suns, she smiled. The lost human had found her way home, and in doing so, had opened the door to a destiny greater than she could have ever imagined. Genesis Project. The day of the procedure dawned clear and bright, the twin suns of the Zenith world casting a surreal glow over the landscape. Sarah stood before a floor-to-ceiling window in the medical facility, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and fear. The reflection that stared back at her seemed both familiar and strange, still human, but changed in subtle ways by her time on this alien world. A gentle touch on her shoulder broke her reverie. She turned to see Lyra and Xylo, their towering forms comforting in their familiarity. "It's time," Lyra said softly, her melodic voice tinged with a mix of hope and concern. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "I'm ready," she said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. The medical chamber was a marvel of Zenith technology, a blend of organic forms and advanced machinery that still took Sarah's breath away. A team of the most skilled Zenith geneticists and physicians awaited them, their faces a mask of professional calm that did little to hide the underlying tension. As Sarah was guided to the central platform, the lead physician, Zara, approached. "Sarah of Earth," she said formally, "do you understand the procedure you are about to undergo?" Sarah nodded. They had been over this countless times, but the gravity of the moment demanded the reiteration. "You'll be using a combination of genetic recombination and advanced gestation techniques," she recited. "The goal is to create embryos that blend human and Zenith DNA, hopefully resulting in viable offspring that carry the best traits of both species." Zara's eyes swirled with approval. "Correct. And you are aware of the risks? This procedure has never been attempted before. The outcome is uncertain." For a moment, Sarah's resolve wavered. The magnitude of what she was about to do crashed over her like a wave. But then she caught sight of Lyra and Xylo, standing at the edge of the room, their expressions a mix of hope and unwavering support. She thought of all she had learned about the Zenith, about the connection between their peoples, about the future they could forge together. "I understand the risks," Sarah said firmly, "and I'm ready to proceed." With a nod from Zara, the procedure began. Sarah felt a moment of discomfort as various devices were connected to her, but it quickly faded, replaced by an odd tingling sensation that spread throughout her body. Time seemed to lose all meaning as the Zenith technology worked its magic. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, aware at times of urgent voices, of flashing lights, of a sense of something momentous taking place. And then suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Sarah's eyes snapped open, her heart racing. The medical team was a flurry of activity, their usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious concern. "What's happening?" Sarah called out, struggling to sit up. Zara was by her side in an instant, her large hand gently, but firmly keeping Sarah in place. "There's been an unexpected reaction," she explained, her voice tense. "The integration process is proceeding faster than we anticipated. Your body is adapting." Sarah felt a surge of panic. "Adapting? What do you mean? Am I turning into a Zenith?" "No, not exactly," Zara said, her eyes fixed on the readings displayed above Sarah's bed. "It's more like your body is trying to bridge the gap between human and Zenith physiology. We need to stabilize the process before." She was cut off by another alarm, this one even more urgent than the last. Sarah felt a wave of dizziness wash over her, the room spinning in a kaleidoscope of colors. "Sarah, Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Sarah, stay with us. Through the haze, Sarah saw Lyra and Silo pushing their way past the medical team, their faces etched with worry. She tried to respond, to tell them she was okay, but no words came out. As the world began to fade to black, Sarah had a sudden, crystal-clear thought. This was it. This was the moment that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of two species. And in that moment, she made a choice. With every ounce of willpower she possessed, Sarah focused on the goal. Not just on surviving, but on bridging the gap between human and Zenith. She thought of Earth, of the Zenith world, of the future they could build together. And somewhere, deep in her changing body, something responded. The alarm suddenly ceased, replaced by a stunned silence. Sarah opened her eyes to find the entire medical team staring at her in awe. Impossible, Zara whispered, her eyes wide as she studied the readings. She stabilized the process. The integration, it's proceeding perfectly. A cheer went up from the assembled Zenith, a sound of pure joy and relief that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Lyra and Silo were at Sarah's side in an instant, their eyes swirling with a mix of emotions too complex to name. "You did it," Lyra said, her voice choked with emotion. "Sarah, you amazing, impossible human, you did it." As the initial excitement died down and the medical team resumed their work with renewed vigor, Sarah found herself drifting again. But this time, it wasn't towards unconsciousness. Instead, she felt as though she was floating in a sea of possibility, aware of changes taking place at the very core of her being. She saw glimpses of what might be, children with her eyes and zenith height, a new generation that combined the best of both worlds. She saw a future where Earth and the Zenith world were not separated by vast gulfs of space, but united in a common purpose. And at the center of it all, she saw herself, changed, evolved, but still fundamentally Sarah. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time had little meaning in the cocoon of transformation that Sarah found herself in. But finally, slowly, she felt herself returning to full awareness. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was Silo's face, creased with concern, but breaking into a relieved smile as their eyes met. "Welcome back," Silo said softly. "How do you feel?" Sarah took a moment to assess herself. She felt different, stronger somehow, more aware of her body, of the space around her. "I feel good," she said, surprised by the depth and resonance in her own voice. "What happened? Did it work?" Before Silo could answer, Zara appeared, her eyes swirling with a mix of excitement and scientific curiosity. "Sarah," she said, "you've done something unprecedented. The genetic integration was successful, but more than that, you've undergone a transformation we never thought possible." Slowly, with Silo's help, Sarah sat up. It was then that she realized something was different. The bed that had once seemed enormous now felt normal. She looked down at her hands, seeing familiar shapes, but with a subtle iridescence to the skin that hadn't been there before. "What?" Sarah began, but trailed off, unsure how to even form the question. Lyra stepped forward, a soft smile on her face. "You've become something new, Sarah. Not quite human, not quite zenith, but a perfect bridge between our species." And she added, her voice filled with wonder, "You're carrying the first of a new generation. The embryos have taken. You're going to be a mother." The news hit Sarah like a physical force. She was changed, transformed, carrying the future of two species within her. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly, impossibly real. As the implications began to sink in, Sarah felt a surge of emotions too complex to name. But rising above it all was a sense of purpose, of rightness. This was why she had crashed on this world. This was the role she was meant to play in the vast, unfolding story of the universe. Sarah of Earth was gone. In her place was Sarah of Earth and Zenith, the mother of a new era. And as she looked at the faces of her Zenith family, Lyra, Silo, Zara, and all the others, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them not alone, but as part of something greater than herself. The Genesis project had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the history of two worlds. The future, vast and unknown, beckoned, and Sarah, once lost but now found, was ready to embrace it with open arms. Legacy of Two Worlds. The months that followed Sarah's transformation were a whirlwind of change and anticipation. Her body, now a unique blend of human and zenith physiology, continued to adapt and evolve. She had grown taller, though not quite to zenith height, and her skin had taken on a subtle iridescence that seemed to shift with her moods. But the most profound change was the life growing within her, the first of a new species, a bridge between two worlds. The zenith world was abuzz with excitement. News of a successful genetic integration had spread, bringing hope to a civilization that had been on the brink of extinction. Delegations from distant zenith colonies arrived daily, eager to witness the miracle for themselves. Sarah, however, found herself craving moments of peace amidst the frenzy. It was during one such quiet moment, as she stood on a balcony overlooking the sprawling zenith city, that she felt the first stirrings of labor. "Lyra," she called, her voice steady despite the mix of excitement and fear coursing through her. "I think it's time." What followed was a blur of activity. Sarah was whisked to a specially prepared birthing chamber, a marvel of zenith medical technology designed to cater to her unique physiology. Lyra and Silo remained by her side, offering comfort and support as Sarah embarked on the final stage of her incredible journey. The birth itself was surprisingly quick, as if the child was eager to greet the world it was about to change forever. As the first cries echoed through the chamber, a hush fell over the assembled zenith. "It's a girl," Zara announced, her voice filled with wonder as she gently cradled the newborn. "And she's perfect." Sarah, exhausted but elated, reached out to hold her daughter for the first time. The child was a breathtaking blend of human and zenith features, eyes that shimmered with an inner light, skin that held a hint of the zenith's iridescence, and a face that somehow captured the best of both species. "Hello, little one," Sarah whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Welcome to your new world." As news of the successful birth spread, celebrations erupted across the zenith world. The birth of this child represented more than just the continuation of a species. It was the dawn of a new era, a fusion of two civilizations that had developed separately across the vastness of space. In the days that followed, as Sarah recovered and bonded with her daughter, she found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. She thought of her old life on Earth, of the lonely scout ship, of the crash that had seemed like the end, but had really been a beginning. "What will you name her?" Sayo asked one quiet evening, as they sat watching the child sleep. Sarah smiled, running a gentle finger along her daughter's cheek. "I've been thinking about that. I want her name to represent both sides of her heritage." She paused, considering. "How about Lyra Hope? Lyra for the zenith who first welcomed me to this world, and Hope for what she represents to both our peoples." Lyra, who had been standing nearby, felt her eyes swirl with emotion at the honor. "It's perfect," she said softly. As Lyra Hope grew, it became clear that she was truly something new. She developed at an astonishing rate, her mind as quick and adaptable as her hybrid physiology. By the time she was walking, she was already showing signs of both human creativity and zenith wisdom. But Lyra Hope was just the beginning. Over the next few years, more hybrid children were born, each one a unique blend of human and zenith traits. Sarah, once just a lost human, found herself at the center of a new and thriving community. The impact of this new generation rippled out across both Earth and Zenith society. When Earth finally re-established contact, drawn by the strange signals emanating from the Zenith world, they found not a lost scout, but an entirely new civilization in the making. The reunion of Earth and Zenith was not without its challenges. There were those on both sides who feared the changes its new hybrid species represented. But Sarah, standing tall as a bridge between worlds, helped guide both civilizations towards a future of cooperation and mutual understanding. 10 years after her fateful crash, Sarah stood once again on the balcony where she had made her decision to help the Zenith. Lyra Hope, now a striking young girl who embodied the best of both worlds, stood beside her. "Mom," Lyra Hope said, her voice carrying the melodic tones of the Zenith, but with a distinctly human inflection, "do you ever regret it? Choosing to stay here, to become what you are now?" Sarah looked out over the city, seeing how it had changed, how it now bustled with a mix of Zenith, humans, and hybrids. She thought of the starships in orbit, carrying diplomats and scientists from Earth eager to learn from their long-lost cousins. She thought of the challenges they had overcome, and those that still lay ahead. "No," she said finally, turning to smile at her daughter. "I don't regret it for a moment. It wasn't an easy path, but it was the right one. We've created something beautiful here, something that will shape the future of both our peoples for generations to come." Lyra Hope nodded, her eyes, so like Sarah's own, yet with the swirling depths of the Zenith, gazing out at the horizon. "What do you think comes next?" she asked. Sarah laughed, pulling her daughter close. "That, my dear, is up to you and your generation. You're the bridge between worlds, the proof that we're stronger together than apart. The future is yours to shape." As they stood there, watching the twin suns set on another day, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. She had come to this world lost and alone, a cosmic castaway adrift in the universe. But she had found more than just a new home. She had found a purpose, a family, and a destiny greater than she could have ever imagined. The lost human was lost no more. And the legacy she had helped create, a legacy of hope, of unity, of bridging the gaps between worlds, would echo across the stars for millennia to come. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the alien sky, Sarah saw not distant, unreachable points of light, but future homes, future adventures. The universe, vast and mysterious, was opening up before them, full of possibilities. And somewhere out there, perhaps another lost soul was about to stumble upon their destiny, just as she had. The thought made her smile. The greatest adventures, after all, often begin when we least expect them. With her daughter by her side and a universe of potential stretching out before them, Sarah of Earth and Zenith turned her gaze to the stars, ready for whatever the future might bring. The end, or perhaps just the beginning.